I hear the word of the Lord from Matthew 6:19 to 21. Don't store up treasures here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be. This is the word of the Lord.
You may be seated. Well, good morning, Sojourn. Peace be with you. It's great to see you guys and to be with you this morning. If you're a guest or if you're a visitor, my name is Jonah, and I'm one of the pastors here at Sojourn. Our mission as a church is to reach people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the good news of who Jesus is and what Jesus has done for us. Build one another up as Jesus' church and send each other to follow Jesus. So thanks again for being here and being with us. It's an exciting Sunday for us. We got baptisms in this service. Thanks be to God. Really grateful for that. We've got a couple of baptisms. We've got 4 more lined up in October. Just the blessings of the Burr months. Do you guys know about the Burr months? September, October, November. These are the best time of the year, so grateful. And if you want to get baptized, come on in. The water's fine. We're ready for it. So, and it's all heated now, and so we're excited about that. Just grateful for the new life the Lord's been bringing here. This is our last Sunday in our series we've been in on heaven. And next week, y'all in for a good one. Who's read the book of Leviticus before, where Bible reading plans go to die? You know, you get to like chapter 2 or so. So up until Advent, we're going to be in the book of Leviticus after this. Leviticus chapter 23 in particular, in a series called God of Time. So we've been talking about heaven and this place we're looking forward to, and how does that shape the way we live now? And the book of Leviticus is God's kind of ordering for life, and in the very middle of it, he talks about time and a calendar, and what's our relationship to time, and how does that affect the way we live? It's all about parties, so bring a party hat if you want. It's all about feasts and partying, and boy, I'm just really, really excited about it. I think we have the artwork. Yeah, Kelly Carr did that. Kelly's a longtime member, so if you know Kelly, thank her for that. She's wonderful, Kelly Carr. And then this will be the last Sunday that you can grab a copy of Heaven by Randy Alcorn, which is kind of like the supplement for this series. And if you want some reading to go along with the God of Time series, we have a book out there by Dr. Dan Allender called Sabbath. Dr. Allender was a pastor, and then he's been a therapist and philosopher, just an all-around heck of a guy for about 30 years. If you have ever thought about the work-life balance, anybody ever felt anxious before, or like there's too much to do and not enough time to do it? Boy, Dan Allender's book on Sabbath might be the medicine you need. So that's out there, or you can just grab it wherever you buy books. It's just an absolutely delightful, delightful book, Sabbath by Dan Allender. Today, again, it's our last sermon on heaven in this series. At least, hopefully, we keep talking about it. And we have a real simple lesson from Jesus. Hopefully, my goal was for at least 2 people to leave this series more excited about heaven than they were before. And so if you're a little bit excited about the wonderful future waiting for us, you may be asking yourself something like, well, what do we do this day to prepare for that day? This series has been structured around kind of the big questions we have about heaven. Where is it? What is it? What will we do there? Why would I want to be there? How do I get there? And today we're going to try to answer the question, what do we do to prepare? What do we do this day to get ready for that day? Hopefully the answer is simple enough that we can all remember it, and then it can fuel our imaginations to start making some connections and applications in our own lives. So here's the lesson for today. We prepare for heaven by following Jesus today. We prepare for that day by following Jesus today. So most superficially or big picture, I'm glad this kind of lands on Baptism Sunday. We didn't plan it, but following Jesus, before it means anything, it means trusting Jesus. This whole thing that we're doing is all about trust. At the end of the day, life is about relationships, and relationships are about trust. Everything in this life went sideways as a result of mistrust. in the garden, if you look at pain in your life, relational pain in your life, something that's going on somewhere under there, you will find an issue of trust, tension in your relationships. There's a breakdown of trust. If you want heaven, if you want to see what this is really all about, the first and really the only thing you do is trust Jesus. We've talked about the thief on the cross quite a bit throughout this series. It's in the Bible. You can go find it if you don't know where it is. And this thief, he doesn't know much about Jesus. A couple months ago, I had a conversation with a guy out back there, and he's like, I want to follow Jesus, but I got so many questions. And I said, welcome to the club called the church, right? Just because you follow Jesus doesn't mean you have all of your questions answered. There's really just like one big one you got to answer to start, and it's, do I know enough about Jesus to say something like what the thief said? Remember me when you come into your kingdom. Lord, save me. Jesus, rescue me. Jesus, I want to follow you. There's all kinds of ways to say it. There's time for questions, and we are a pro-question church. And if what we've been saying about heaven is even close to true, we will have plenty of time for questions when time stops existing, and we can grow and learn and develop. But if you know enough today to say Jesus is Lord, the application is say that. This is what we ask all of our baptism candidates. What is your sacred confession of faith? And you'll hear them say, Jesus is Lord. So if you're ready to say Jesus is Lord, say it. This is our first act of trust. And again, there's no Christianity isn't magic. It's not, the Bible isn't a spell book. There's no correct magical incantation you have to say. It can just be a simple prayer. If it takes more than one breath to pray it, it's probably too complicated. You can say something like, Lord, have mercy on me. Jesus, save me. Jesus, I trust you. This is where we begin. This is how we get to heaven. We turn our hearts to Jesus. We place our trust in him. However much trust you have. At one point, Jesus described to us how much trust we need to get in the game. Do anybody remember what he said? How much faith is required? A mustard seed. Are seeds big or little? Little. And is a mustard seed, of all the seeds, a big seed or a little seed? He uses the littlest version of one of the littlest things to try to convince you, oh, you don't need much. Because it's not about how much faith you have, it's about who your faith is in. We place our trust, however much we have, in Jesus, and that's always where the story begins. And then the rest of our lives and on into eternity are spent falling deeper and deeper into trust with Jesus. We'll learn to trust him when he says things like, I love you, and I say you are good. When he created us, he said we are good. And that's an issue of trust, because most of us, you don't have to raise your hand unless you want to amen and make me not feel alone. Most of us have a voice in our heads that says we're not enough. We're not good. I haven't done enough. I don't measure up. And then we hear the voice of Jesus say to us, oh, you are enough. I delight in you. I love you. And we'll learn to trust him. As you get to know the story more, you'll learn to trust him. Some of us feel like we're not enough because of all of the stuff we've done. And we'll come to learn what it means that he absorbed every ounce of our sin when he died in our place at the cross in Calvary. And if he absorbed all of it, how much is left? None. When we sing Jesus paid it all, we really actually mean all of it, which means now God can't be mad at you anymore because it's all been forgiven. The more you see that and immerse yourself in it, you'll fall deeper into trust. You'll learn to trust Jesus because he rose from the dead. And you'll look at that and be like, you know what? That addresses some of my skepticism about his other teachings. If this man rose from the dead, that's going to change the way I view the way he answers some of the questions that I have. You'll learn to trust him as you see him with you, as you go through life. You learn to recognize his nearness. With good friends, you start sharing your story and looking back through your life. And you'll see not only is he with you now, but as you look back, you'll see he was with me there too. You'll learn to trust him as you experience the sweetness of his promises. And then eventually, when our time here on earth ends, we'll fall deeper into trusting him when we see him face to face. So I'm just going to say it one or 100 more times. We prepare for heaven by placing our trust in Jesus. That's where we start. It begins with a simple declaration of trust. And after that, we pattern our lives after his from a posture of trust. We trust Jesus by following him today. This is how we prepare for heaven. Whether you're like, oh, I've never done this before, and I'm curious to begin. Or if you've been in church your whole life, the rhythm doesn't change. We follow Jesus by trusting Jesus today. And if you need some texture on, well, what does that mean? What does that look like to continue on? A way to think about it is we trust Jesus by living like what Jesus said was true. And so I got a lot of amens on that, thinking like I'm not enough. What would it look like for you to start walking into rooms believing what Jesus said about you? You have nothing to prove. You are forgiven. You are free. That's just an example. All of us know something about this naturally. We naturally change the way we live today when we have something to look forward to in the future. When you have a great vacation plan, the way you work, the way you spend your money, the way you spend your evenings, all of that changes real naturally. When you have a baby on the way, half of our church is pregnant, so you know, I love it. I'm pro. When you have a baby on the way, everything about your daily life changes. When you have a wedding on the way, your daily life changes. When the first day of school is coming, whenever we have an event we're looking forward to out there, the things we do right here change. We all know this. And heaven is really no different. Jesus says you are loved. Jesus says you are forgiven. Jesus says you are free. And Jesus says you are on your way home. And so we prepare for heaven by following Jesus today, living like what he has said is true. Now we get to spend the rest of our lives figuring out what does that mean and what does that look like in my life where I live. He gives us a beautiful principle that I think has enough meat on the bone that we can spend the rest of our lives trying to figure out what does this look like. So he says in Matthew 6, don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them and where thieves break in and steal. So to maybe put it in the language of the people, what Jesus is saying is to put all of your attention on your life right here and right now is a bad investment. If a financial planner came to your house and knocked on your door and said, would you be interested in this mutual fund? And I guarantee you, you will lose 20% of your money over the next 5 years. That joke didn't land. Amen. The financial planner gets it. If I said, if you give me $100, I will give you back 80 this time next year, would you say yes? It's just a bad investment. Why is it a bad investment? Jesus says because it's temporary. And I want to be real clear. He doesn't say your stuff is bad. It's not wrong in and of itself. Here's something I've been thinking about on the way to the Burr months. I love me a sweater. Amen? Like a nice sweater. And I'm in my 40s now, which means, you find that nice sweater once a year and like, I'm going to get a new sweater. And then you wake up and you have so many sweaters, you have to buy containers to store your sweaters in because I don't have enough closet to put my sweaters in there. So now I have storage area for my extra stuff that doesn't fit in my storage area. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to open up, and I guarantee you one of those sweaters that I haven't worn in 1 to 5 years, I will look at it, and there'll be a little hole in it from a creature. You've had this experience, right? Is it wrong to own that sweater? No, it's not. It's not wrong. But we buy all of this stuff thinking that we own it. And then you go to move, and you see how much stuff you have and how much energy you've spent into managing this stuff, and realize I don't own this stuff. This stuff owns me. I spend so much of my life maintaining it and taking care of it. We buy so many clothes that we have to store them away only to open them a year later and see that there's holes in them. All the while, all of this stuff, it's just slowly deteriorating. be it a home, a car, clothes, whatever the thing is that you're into. And notice, again, he's not saying it's bad. The stuff isn't bad. But the way we handle our stuff reflects where our hope is. If your hope is in your stuff here and now, how good can I look? How much can I own? How much can I accumulate? If our hope is in our stuff here and now, Jesus is telling us it's a bad investment. When all of our attention in our life is around getting stuff and accumulation, it reveals a real misunderstanding of how long all of this lasts, where we're all going, and how long that really lasts. This teaching is part of his Sermon on the Mount, and I think a big motivation, a big truth that Jesus is trying to encourage us in is that we just need to hold all of this stuff a bit more loosely. We need to hold this life a bit more loosely. There are limitations while we are as we are now, and while the earth is as it is now. And we're already doing this naturally. If you were here last week, Pastor Sam said you can take the boy out of Eden, but you can't take the Eden out of the boy. And I just sat over there crying. We all have the sense in us that there's more waiting for us. So think of it this way. Raise your hand if you've been on vacation. You've been on a vacation? Nearly everybody's been on a vacation. If you have children, you've had something like this happen. If you ever have children, something like this will happen to you. The night before, because it's 8:30 and you need to have a third dinner, one of your children says, I want some cereal. We've been there, parents. And because you've been managing your fridge, you get to the end of the week and you don't have any milk in the fridge, right? Because we're going on vacation. But the child wants cereal. Who among us, knowing we are going on vacation the next morning, would go out and buy a full gallon of milk for one bowl of cereal? We would not do this, right? Because what do we find when we come back from vacation? Green, stinky milk, chunky milk. I'm a whole milk man. I don't need chunky milk, right? Now, you may go to the gas station and buy like one bottle of milk, like the little single serving milk, so your kid can still get the cereal. But why would we not go spend money and buy that milk? We don't want our house to stink, and it's a waste. We know this isn't going to last, so why would we do this? Again, because we tend to be a people of extremes, Jesus is not saying we should not own anything. He's not saying don't ever buy pants. Christians should have one shirt and one pair of pants and run them out your whole life. That's not what he's saying. He's saying just learn to hold your stuff loosely because it's so temporary. Live your life with an awareness that this stuff is temporary. To put your hope, your security, your sense of worth, your sense of worthiness in your money or your savings or your house or your clothes or whatever is to put energy into a bad investment. How creative we get when we want something that's so temporary. Jesus isn't saying it's wrong. He's just saying be careful about making bad investments. When we live this way, thinking this stuff is all there is, looking for the next rung to climb, the next thing to buy, the next whatever. Part of the reason it's such a bad investment, yes, it's temporary, but it also dulls the hope we have in heaven. It makes that image out there blurrier and fuzzier, and we get so consumed by what's right here. So what do we do instead? Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. So instead of making investments in temporary realities, we make them in eternal ones. We set our hearts on heaven the same way that Jesus did. And we figure out how to organize our lives and hold our stuff loosely to make sure that our hearts are pointed to that place. When I was working on this, a famous passage came to mind that I think can help us start pulling on some threads, and maybe you can start making some conclusions about your life. In Isaiah 50, this is the prophet speaking of Jesus. He says, "Because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be disgraced." So again, because the sovereign Lord, he's in control, he's strong, because he helps me, I will not be disgraced. You see it looking out into the future? I look out there because he helps me. Whatever happens out there, it's not going to go poorly for me. God is with me. He helps me. I know my story does not end in shame. So that's just the first part of the verse I wanted to read, but even to just stop there for a second and try to soak in that I don't know what you're facing. I don't know what difficult reality you're facing or what pain you might be carrying this morning. But how might you face whatever it is you're facing if you knew that it wouldn't end in disgrace? How might you face what you're facing if you knew it wouldn't end in more pain, more shame, more sorrow? You know something of this already because you know what the work week feels like when you're going on vacation on Saturday. It doesn't mean the problems magically go away or the difficult realities aren't still difficult. They're just lighter and you care less about them. So with this confidence that the sovereign Lord helps me and I know my story doesn't end in disgrace, what does Jesus do? It says, "Therefore I have set my face like a stone, determined to do his will, and I know that I will not be put to shame." Other English translations will put this a little more poetically and say, "I have set my face like flint towards Jerusalem." Does anybody think of something significant that happened to Jesus in Jerusalem? Anybody think of one? A big one? Talk about it every Sunday. The crucifixion. Jesus is looking out and he knows what's waiting for him. But I know that the Lord is with me. I know the Lord helps me. I know my story doesn't end in shame, and so my face is like a stone to do the will of the Lord. What is this image communicating? I mean, do you see the strength, the courage, the resolve? So if we prepare for heaven by following Jesus today, and that means we're going to live like what he said is true, there's a sense of our faces are set like flint towards our heavenly home, like a stone committed to do the will of the Lord and to not move. So what does this actually look like? Is there a heavenly mutual fund that we could just go buy a few shares of? I wish it were that simple. But try to imagine for a minute, we have such a good time here at church and you all are like, "Don't stop, just keep going." And we all just hang out after the baptisms. And I say, "Okay, we're all going to gather here in the auditorium. And we're going to, one by one, starting in the front row. Sorry, ladies, we're going to start up here. And we're going to put all of your expenses, every dollar you spent, we're going to put it up on the screen. And we're all going to look at it. And after we go line by line, what date you spent what on what, we're all going to collectively say, what does this person prioritize? What is important to that person? If it was your money up there, what would we say matters to you? Now, if that stings for you, that you stung you, I didn't sting you. You know what I'm saying? Like if you look at that and you're like, "Oh boy, they would know." The point is to imagine an exercise like that is to consider, do your finances reflect your hope in the life to come? Or do your finances look like someone who thinks that this life is all there is? And again, we didn't plan this to be on Baptism Sunday, so if you're a guest and you're like, "Here we go, church is talking about money." Like this, I'm just couldn't be talking less about putting money in the church bucket. That's not what this is about. If you knew that this life was temporary and you were going to a place where the streets are paved with gold, how might your posture towards your money change? I think most of us live like this with our money. I got to repaint my house sometime in the next month, and I am stressing out about it. Not happy about it, but I am. And if we knew what was coming, wouldn't we just maybe relax and open up a little bit? Wouldn't it feel just a little bit easier? When someone says, hey, wouldn't we delight in sharing what we have if we knew there was plenty to go around and plenty waiting for us? If we made it through the finance portion of our special meeting and we put schedules up on the screen, and if you're like, I don't have a schedule, don't ever say that to me because I'll have a panic attack. I can't imagine a life without a calendar, and would be like, there's just too much going on. It just stresses me out. So for whoever has a calendar, we put it up there. And we look at how you spend your time, particularly the non-negotiable time. You know what I mean by that? Everybody has some sliver around their time where it's like, I don't change this for anything. Nothing gets in the way of this thing. If we looked at how you spent your time, what would we conclude you prioritize? Big picture, storing up your treasures in heaven means spending your time and spending your money in a way that helps you and others experience more of Jesus. Because I'll tell you, you can spend your time in a way that makes it harder to experience the presence of Jesus, and you can spend your money in a way that makes it harder to believe the promises of Jesus. If you live in perpetual rush and perpetual debt, and Jesus has come to me and I will give you rest, you will say, liar. Because your life doesn't reflect that. There are ways you can spend your time and spend your money that make the promises of Jesus so much sweeter and easier to believe. I'll just give you one example. And it's free. So if you took, 10 to 20 minutes, whatever you can tolerate, and went somewhere quiet and alone, and you said something crazy to the Lord, like, Lord, speak to me. And you sat there and listened in the silence for as long as you could tolerate. If you did that once a week for the next 6 months, I guarantee you the living God will speak to you. Try it. Find out if I'm lying to you. And that's free. But boy, that's going to require us to say no to other stuff. It's going to require us to put our phones away, to plan and to schedule. The point is, there are ways we can use our resources that help us to believe the promises of Jesus, to help others see the face of Jesus. So we prepare for heaven today by following Jesus. I'm just going to give you 2 more examples for us to think about. If you're not uncomfortable yet, I'm going to try to get you on this one. If we had a video, so we get through the finances and we get through the schedule, and now we play a video of your last political disagreement with somebody. We had a hidden camera. Somebody just gasped, I think. It made my heart beat fast. If we watched a video of your last political disagreement, what would we say is most important to you? I'm going to start crying. I don't know why. Sometimes you got to kung fu it out. Just got to chop the tears sometimes. I don't know if you have somebody in your life that when you're in the presence of them, you feel like it helps you understand what being in the presence of God is like. I hope that makes sense to some of you. Everyone I know who's older, and when I'm near them, it feels like, I don't know how to say it, they've been with the Master. You smell like Jesus. Everyone I know who I experience that way, these older saints among us, they seem to care so much about a very few number of things. The wiser and the more mature among us care so much about an increasingly small number of things. And all of the ones that look like Jesus and talk like Jesus, one of the things they'll care about is when Jesus said to his disciples, "The world will know you belong to me by the way you love each other." If we knew what Jesus said about heaven was true, how might that change the way we disagree? What might happen around us if the world came to know Christians by how much we love each other? Last example for us to think about, maybe to lighten the mood. I affirm many spiritual disciplines in the Christian life. I try to practice a few of them. One I believe very strongly in is the spiritual discipline of feasting. Did you know that's a spiritual discipline? If you are unfamiliar with feasting, well, first, the spiritual discipline of feasting also implies the discipline of fasting. Ooh, boy. So if you want to go down the feast road, you got to be willing to go down the fast road. So I'm not advocating feasting as a way of life. That's called gluttony. But feasting as a time set aside, a party, a celebration that's meant to help prepare us for heaven. This is the whole book of Leviticus. I mean, this is Leviticus 23. How do you manage your time in a way that prepares you for heaven? And I don't know what you think about God, but when he told us how to structure our time, it's all about parties. It's all about feasts. There is a way to eat food that will prepare you for heaven. I think it says something of the heart of God, that the fundamental way he gave us to prepare for heaven was given to us at a feast, and it involves eating and it involves drinking. The Lord's Supper every week was given during a Passover feast, and he associated. If you want to remember who I am and what this is all about, you're going to have to learn how to eat and drink in a new way. So after instructing his followers to drink wine as a way of remembering his blood shed for them, listen to what Jesus said. He said, "Mark my words, I will not drink wine again until the day I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." Jesus says his next celebration, he's in a period of fasting. His next feast will be the great wedding feast of the Lamb, his wedding day, when all things have been made new again, when we've been resurrected and restored and healed, and all of our tears and pain and sorrow wiped away. You can eat in a way that makes this more real. I learned this from a friend. I didn't invent this. So once or twice a year, if we're lucky, my wife and I will be with some of our dear friends. These are other pastors at other churches, and we gather from around the country, and we set aside a time and we have a feast. It's at a restaurant because we're not cooking a feast. Maybe if you're cooking, you can cook. And it's the kind of place where you just order. Have you ever had a meal where you just order? You don't negotiate, you don't plan, and when someone's like, well, should I get this or that? We say, get both. We don't pick appetizers. We just say one of each. We don't question the desserts. We'll say one of each. And it's just, it's going to be more than we would ever want to spend on it, but we're doing it once a year. We'll have just a huge meal, and it's filled with laughter, the kind where your face gets tight and your belly gets warm and you just feel so happy. Everything is just wonderful and delightful. And then after, the gut buster, budget buster meal, at some point near the end, it's never planned, it's just always happened this way. Someone will stand around the table. They'll raise a glass and they'll say something like, "How good was this meal?" And we'll applaud. And we'll bring the server over and thank him for helping us have such a great experience. And we'll just say, "It was so good." And then my friend with the cup will say, "Then how good must the wedding feast of the Lamb be?" And in a moment, we see how much more is happening here than this meal. Our souls are filled with hope and expectation, and we are prepared. So store up your treasure in heaven. Live with your sights on heaven. Prepare for heaven by following Jesus today. If you're willing and able, stand with me and we'll pray together.